I don't know if you know, but Spider-Man is probably Marvel's most popular character. His stories always sell. Everyone and their moms recognizes him, and villains and heroes always underestimate him because of his age and youthful stature. Big mistake. Peter Parker and Miles Morales met for the first time when Peter was teleported to Miles' universe. Now, I don't know why Peter's first decision was to attack Mr. Morales. He's had clones of himself before, and he's also been to other alternate universes, but hey, that's what he did. And it was 110% a mistake. As fans of Miles know, he is extremely capable. And he also has a unique Spider-Man power set. He used his Venom sting to paralyze Peter while jumping over him. He then went invisible and got Peter with a sneak attack kick to the face. It doesn't stop there though. After Peter demasked Miles, he got a nice electric shock that knocked him out cold. For an 11-year-old kid, Miles gave the experienced Peter Parker quite the beating. Number 9. Winter Soldier and Falcon. For a young lad, Peter Parker seems to overpower a lot of people. In his introduction to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Peter just shows us, and two of Captain America's best pals, that he ain't someone to mess with. During their fight, he overpowered the super soldier, even using his metal arms against him, disables and webs up Falcon, and redirects a huge chunk of metal flung at him by the Winter Soldier, all while quipping in the best ways possible. It was honestly so awesome to see when it first happened. He leaves them laying on the ground exhausted and webbed up. Not only an embarrassment for the two veteran soldiers and heroes, but a really fitting and hilarious introduction for the character to the MCU. Number 8. Luke Cage. A lot of the time, when a new hero is introduced into a comic book world, a fight between the misunderstood hero and another has to take place. That is exactly what happened when Luke Cage came on the scene. Luke Cage, the hero for hire, showed up in the Amazing Spider-Man number 123, hired by J. Jonah Jameson to capture Spider-Man for the death of Norman Osborn. Luke Cage ain't a guy you should underestimate by any means. Super strength and stamina, bulletproof skin, and a healing factor. But it's Spider-Man. Luke tackles Spider-Man off a roof and gets a few punches in. But Spider-Man kicked him off of another roof, teased him about basically being a mercenary, slammed him through a brick wall, got several fists to the face in, used Luke's own weight against him, and punched him through a skylight. They come to blows later on in the comic with pretty much the same outcome, causing Luke Cage to quit this one particular job. Go Web! Fly! Up, up, and away, Web! Shazam! Go, Web, go! 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 Go, Web, go! Oh wait, that's not my power. No, my power is to make YouTube videos for you guys. Do you know what gives me this power? You liking and subscribing to the channel. And you are doing an absolutely stunning job. Keep it up. And don't forget to check out our Facebook for more content. Number 7. The Hulk. In terms of raw power, Spider-Man stands absolutely no chance against the Hulk. I think his spider sense may give him some kind of advantage, but there is no way he is lasting long in that fight. Unless he gets a power boost in the form of, I don't know, the power cosmic. Oh, that's exactly what happened in the Amazing Spider-Man issue number 328. The Grey Hulk, who yes is a bit weaker and logical compared to his Savage counterpart, is hired by Sebastian Shaw to target Spider-Man. Money is always a good motivator. Unfortunately for Hulk, Spider-Man has been going to the cosmic gym and hitting the cosmic weights. He lands some pretty heavy blows on the Grey Goliath and even blinds him with a new I-beam power. When some kids are put in danger though, Spider-Man ends the conflict quick by punching the Hulk into orbit, and then saving him before he suffocates, standing all confident with his hands on his hips and like that. Number 6. The Fantastic Four. In the very first issue of his self-titled magazine, Spider-Man is putting other heroes to shame. Spider-Man infiltrates the Baxter building, where he is encased in a plexiglass cage that he very easily opens the door to. He takes a single punch from the thing before he throws him into Johnny Storm. When Reed tries to catch Peter, he totally just dodges it and webs up Mr. Fantastic's hands. He uses his spider sense to detect Sue Storm while she's invisible and spins her around really fast with her lasso. But then, Johnny Storm gets him in a circle of flame. He says, and I quote, "Well, I'll just jump over that clown's little trap." It's honestly a pretty impressive display, and it happened in no less than 1.5 pages. The fight ends when Spider-Man lets him know that he's here to join up, and with that little fight was just a display of what he can do. Yeah, that little display would probably do better than a resume. Number 5. Iron Man. In the Civil War storyline, we know that Spider-Man initially is on the side of Tony Stark's Iron Man. But after he sees the lengths that Tony is willing to go to, he has a bit of a change of heart. Obviously, this leads to a scuffle between the two. At this time, Tony had given Peter the Iron Spider suit. What he didn't tell Peter is that he built in an emergency override that would shut down the suit and essentially shut down Peter with the simple phrase Omega Omega Epsilon 9. It's only a bit of a jerk move. You took Peter under your wing, but you're going to plant a failsafe against him? It kind of makes it look like you know you're guilty. But then again, he is a genius, he is a member of the Illuminati, and he is not the kind of guy to take risks. But how is this embarrassing for Tony? Well, I'm glad you asked, my little nerds. Peter is no idiot, and behind Stark's back, he hacked into the suit and built in his own override to override the override that Tony put there. Passcode, surprise. And the suit is back up and running and covers Tony's helmet in a thick layer of web, allowing Peter to get in a good punch and escape. Number 4. Wolverine. This one's a pretty quick one. I bet some of you thought I was going to pull from the Wolverine vs. Spider-Man comic. I'll do you one better. It should be obvious, but you don't dare insult Mary Jane Watson to Peter's face. In Amazing Spider-Man issue 522, Peter is awoken with a call about a newspaper article claiming Mary Jane has a little entanglement with Tony Stark. It's obviously not true and actually a setup by a villain. But that's not the point right now. Peter got out of his bed in Stark Tower and goes looking for his wife. Along the way, he runs into Wolverine in a room with a very lovely high-up view of the city. Now, Logan decides to start going on about how Mary Jane messed up big time, and after a warning from Peter, he decides to comment on her lack of brains. This lovely little comment gets him thrown through an unbreakable glass window, and it gives him a really colorful way to catch a cab. Number 3. Daredevil. When Spider-Man was in possession of the symbiote suit, he wasn't his normal self. He was much more ruthless. And Spider-Man can already knock criminals into a coma when he is pulling his punches. When Spider-Man interrupts Sin Eater Stanley Carter from attacking Betty Brant and almost killing her, he starts to lay into the guy, beating Stanley while giving him an earful. Peter goes so far that Daredevil notices his heartbeat pounding and pulls him off of the beaten villain. He defends the criminal from Peter, who is seemingly gonna kill him. If you want him, you'll have to come through me. Probably not the best choice of words there, Daredevil. The very next panel shows Daredevil flying through a window. If it wasn't such a serious moment, I would laugh. Nah, I did laugh. Is that wrong? I can't help it, I'm sorry. Number 2. The X-Men. It seems that Spider-Man really shows his skill when he comes into contact with teams of heroes. First the Fantastic Four, and in the 4th issue of Secret Wars, the X-Men. As if dealing with multiple superpowered beings was his speciality or something. I think the best part about these altercations is the way he just keeps talking while he's embarrassing them. After Xavier senses Spider-Man listening in on their conversation, Spider-Man attacks the X-Men a little prematurely, I'll admit. He dodges Wolverine, webs Colossus' face, dangles Rogue from a rod, webs up Nightcrawler faster than he can say BAMF, and swats Wolverine away with a single swing and escapes. It's just so crazy to me how he knows that he easily outclasses almost every one of the X-Men. Or if not, he knows exactly how to subdue them. Number 1. Superboy. If we're doing a video about characters embarrassing other heroes, there's almost always going to be one point that has to do with the DC and Marvel crossover event. Just like the first point, this isn't actually Peter Parker though, but it's a clone of him, so that's basically the same thing. When the DC Marvel crossover happened, Ben Reilly had taken up the Spider-Man mantle. And it was him that fought Superboy on a rooftop. To get things going, Spider-Man hits the Superboy with a webbing right to his very stylish sunglasses. Superboy, just trying to get a hit on our Spider friend, busts a hole into a water tower, drenching the entire battlefield. Spider-Man wouldn't stand too long in a one-on-one slugging match with this guy, but that's not his specialty anyways. Just as Superboy is about to land a flying blow into Spidey, he jumps out of the way, firing webbing all over the guy and leaving the soaking wet Superboy to fly straight into an electrical box taking him right out of the fight.
Number 10. Bishop. Bishop's powers are based in energy manipulation, as so many other heroes from his time period were. And no, I don't mean the future, I mean the time in which he was created in the comics. The 90s. What a time. Still, Lucas Bishop is one of the few heroes who withstood the test of time and is currently a main character in the comics today, appearing as part of the Marauders team and as Red Queen Kitty Pryde's Red Bishop within the Hellfire Trading Company. I'm so happy that Bishop got to be a bishop. It's too perfect. It's so perfect. Bishop is considered an alpha level mutant and is often known for brandishing his future XSE guns, which he can recharge with any energy he has absorbed and stored. Pretty useful. We're talking near unlimited ammo, as long as he has some kind of energy coming his way. Number 9. Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, formerly known as X-23. Laura has since taken up the mantle of Wolverine after her genetic father Logan. She too is now known as Wolverine, so we get to have 2 of them on the island of Krakoa. Yay! Just like that, they gave Laura that title, but didn't feel like they had to take it away from her after Logan himself was using it again in his own self-titled series. It feels very respectful to let her keep it. Also, Laura definitely deserves our respect, as she is not only extremely durable like Logan, possessing her own healing factor, but is also an immensely skilled and deadly fighter, who you would likely not want to mess with, being trained since birth. Wolverine is currently part of the newest X-Men roster, featured in the 2021 book, but has also been an ally and member here and there throughout the years. And before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, be sure to show up by clicking that like, and we've got a little announcement for you. We have a new channel coming your way. What? It is called Top 10 Nerd Elite, and if you want all that good bonus content, you need to go over there and you need to subscribe. Number 8. Sync. Everett Thomas just recently saw an amazing power boost in the comics. So amazing in fact that it actually took me forever to collect the issue in which it was featured, issue 18 of the previous X-Men run from 2019. Don't worry though, I finally tracked it down, so my collection as such is complete. Perfect. And honestly, I get why it was such a highly coveted issue. It also features Sync's rainbow aura that shines through when he is using his ability and syncing up with other mutants. Up until recently, Sync's powers gave him the ability to temporarily take on the powers of mutants near him, syncing up with them. But as of issue 18, he can now sync up with any superhuman being. And it's also been implied before that with more experience, he could take on the powers of others for longer and perhaps even permanently. Number 7. Wolverine. He's the best there is at what he does, bub. So of course Logan has to make our cut. Wolverine is one of the most popular mutants and X-Men members out there the world over, which gives him a pretty big boost when it comes to what he's capable of. Wolverine might not be Omega or even Alpha level, but he never backs down from a fight, and is not to be underestimated, as he's probably one of the most determined and often noble heroes around. Sure, you might be able to beat him initially, but due to his insane healing factor, Wolverine will often just get back up and keep coming back for more. He's also a super skilled fighter. On more than one occasion, he's taken a bullet to the head and after a few moments managed to recover and get right back up. In alternate realities, we've also seen Wolverine bombarded with energy blasts until he was nothing more than a skeleton, and he still managed to come back from that. Wolverine is tough as nails, but with a heart of gold, which is what makes him such a great X-Men member and just an overall great character. Number 6. Polaris. Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, and with that comes a lot of power and honestly probably a lot of pressure as well. Still, Lorna handles the pressure fairly well and all the other stuff that comes with being Magneto's daughter, like her mind being manipulated when she was a child. Okay, so maybe she didn't handle that whole reveal so great, but she definitely shows just how resilient she can be whenever she has to deal with some of the more challenging parts of being Magneto's heir. Polaris' powers are similar to her father's, allowing her to manipulate magnetic fields, and she is considered an alpha level mutant. More recently in the comics, while using her abilities and with the help of Krakoa, she built the X-Factor's new headquarters on the Mutant Island nation all in one night. Pretty impressive stuff. Number 5. Juggernaut. Juggernaut is one of the most powerful characters out there in the comics, and while he might not be a mutant and is known for being in fact a longtime X-Men villain, neither of these things stopped him from eventually joining the team. This was all around the time that Juggy had lost most of his powers, with Kane having a falling out with Sidorak and ultimately deciding to patch things up with his stepbrother Charles Xavier. He joined the X-Men and during his time there surprisingly made a good number of friends, including the mutant known as Squid Boy. Poor Squid Boy. R.I.P. Who would attempt to blow the whistle when he found Kane in a meeting with the Brotherhood. Kane actually was operating as a mole, hoping to play along long enough to learn of the Brotherhood of Mutants' plans and warn the X-Men of them. Such a tragic story! Number 4. Magneto. Magneto obviously has to make our cut. Despite being a powerful X-Men villain, like Juggernaut, he too has been an ally to the team and even at one point was a member. Magneto had a few instances where he worked alongside the X-Men and even at one point saved them from imprisonment. He eventually attempted to join up with them but was initially denied membership by Professor X. Later, however, Magneto would ally himself with the team during their time together on Battleworld and eventually would end up joining the team and acting as a leader of sorts after Professor X was injured. During his time on the team, Magneto would also become the teacher of the New Mutants, which I love. Number 3. Storm. Storm is of course one of the most powerful mutants out there, and definitely one of the most powerful X-Men members. Not just for her amazing powers either, but also for her skills as a leader and a fighter. Recently during the pre-Hellfire Gala issue of Marauders, in honor of their valuable teammate Storm, the Marauders came together to share their favorite Storm stories and moments. We also learned just how dangerous Storm can be even without her powers, and as awesome as she is with them, I think some of my favorite Storm moments recently have actually involved her fighting hand to hand, or with her famous and perhaps endless supply of knives. We still don't really know for sure how many knives Storm has on her at all times. At the very least, we know it's 8 though. And if you want to check out that very heavy Storm issue of Marauders, you can check it out in issue 20. Number 2. Marvel Girl. Marvel Girl is one of the greatest and most powerful X-Men members out there, and really no powerful X-Men members list can be complete without her. Sadly, sort of, as I did want Storm to take my number 1 spot on this list honestly. I was really like, I really want to make Storm number 1. Jean Grey has done a lot of good and a lot of bad, but whatever side she happens to be on as Marvel Girl, Phoenix, or Dark Phoenix, the fact remains that she's always pretty unstoppable. Unless, of course, she wants to be stopped. Even back when she was originally introduced in the comics, back in issue number 1 of the Uncanny X-Men, she stood out, at least to me, as having the most potential in terms of her powers and power levels. Of course, then she'd later succumb to a bit of Princess Peach syndrome, as she would constantly be the member of the team who'd get kidnapped or in some cases be rendered useless because of the limits of how much she could mentally lift being tied to how much she could physically lift, which I don't know, doesn't seem like it should be a thing, but it was a thing at the time. Though later on her limitations could probably be explained away by the mental blocks Xavier had placed in Jean's mind to protect her and others from her insane raw power, which we'd learn about later, of course. And friends, if you also love Jean Grey as much as we love Jean Grey, we also have a really awesome Jean Grey alternates list, so if you want to learn about more powerful versions of her, you should go check that out. It's a good time. Number 1. Tempest. Just because it's hard for me to always succumb to Jean being number 1. Even though I know she deserves it, I know she's number 1, we have Tempest at her number 1 spot today. Because Tempest could literally undo anyone just like that. Like she did with Matthew Malloy, who was set up to be pretty much the most powerful mutant in all of existence, I'd say. His reality manipulation was off the charts. And yet Tempest was able to defeat him by traveling back in time to make sure his parents just never met. Her ability allows her to create time bubbles in which she can control the flow of time. She can slow or speed up time as much as she wants within the bubbles, and can also use her chronokinesis powers to time travel. Time travel initially for Tempest was a little tricky, as her emotions have been shown to affect her abilities, but she has also spent years working to hone them. So at this point in time, she's definitely someone you wouldn't want to piss off. Otherwise, you might go to bed one night and then never wake up again, because Tempest decided to erase you from existence. Number 10. X-Force. X-Force is known for being one of the most ruthless mutant and X-Men related teams in the comics. It was initially more Cable's team and was used like a sort of time police force to remove threats to the timeline. However, as time went on, the name became repurposed and is now more associated with someone like Wolverine, known for being a sort of mutant black ops team, usually that he leads. Currently, Krakoa is equivalent to America's CIA, and in fact very currently, as of right now in 2022 at the time of this recording, the team is more Hank McCoy, Beast's team, which has recently moved out of the shadows, with Beast deciding to no longer basically hide all the morally questionable, super shady decisions that he's been making, to eliminate threats and keep Krakoa safe. Although sometimes it seems like his true aim may actually be something more sinister, because it is an interesting way of trying to keep people safe. And friends, before I move on to my next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd and you love the X-Men, then we have a playlist for you. It's our X-Men playlist. Go check it out and you can watch all the X-Men content that we've done. Done a lot. Number 9. Brotherhood of Arakko. There have been a couple of X-Men Red teams over the years in Marvel Comics, but for the purpose of this list, we're focused on Storm's Brotherhood that she brought together during her time as ruling regent out on planet Arakko, formerly known as Mars before the mutants terraformed it and claimed it for themselves and their people. They appear mainly in the book X-Men Red, which is why I'm referring to them as kind of like X-Men Red, though really the title for this book is a bit of a misnomer when it comes to Storm's team. Well, you could call Storm's Brotherhood this book's main team, and thus X-Men Red because that's the name of the series. It seems initially this was more in reference to the team Abigail Brand tried to put together, but kind of failed to really have takeoff, with Storm's team taking prominence instead. The team initially consisted of Storm, Magneto, the Fisher King, and Sunspot, but now that Magneto is gone, also includes Cora the Burning Heart and Wrongslide. Also includes Cora of the Burning Heart and Wrongslide, a resurrected Rockslide who came back different after he was killed in Otherworld. Number 8. Avengers Unity Division. The Avengers Unity Division is basically a combination of X-Men and Avengers, which makes it pretty OP. At least it was a combination of both these teams when it first started. The team was created by Captain America as a result of the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline. After the fallout, Cap felt pretty bad about basically not really helping the mutants more in regards to promoting them towards humanity and making sure that the world over did not really hate and fear mutants. At least, you know, he felt as responsible as he, as one man, could do. But he's a pretty influential guy, so he was like, maybe I should have been helping you guys more. In an effort to do this now, he decided to bring together Avengers and X-Men to work together, creating the Avengers Unity Division. Later on, Inhumans would even be added into the mix as well, so really this team is all about bringing people from different worlds who maybe don't always see eye to eye together, which is a really beautiful sentiment when you think of it. On the initial team, which was known editorially as Uncanny Avengers, we had Captain America leading and joined by Havoc, Thor, Rogue, Scarlet Witch, and Wolverine. Rogue and Scarlet Witch were an especially challenging combination of characters to have on this team, as Rogue vehemently hated Wanda for what she had done to mutants during House of M, and saw her basically as a villain. In fact, most mutants did at that time, so this was in general a powerful team on paper, but one that also came with like a lot of issues and a lot of baggage, to be honest. Of course, that's what makes it so interesting to read, right? We're here for the drama. Number 7. Great Ring of Arakko. The Great Ring of Arakko is exclusively made up of Omega level mutants, which really tells you how much of a powerhouse team they would be. They are the ruling body of Arakko, which is the sister mutant island nation to Krakoa. In fact, Arakko and Krakoa are kind of like less siblings and more romantically tied. Ooh, romantic islands that are in love with each other. Both are sentient mutant islands, and for a long time they were actually attached to one another, literally and romantically, and were also in love with each other. Although now, they actually prefer to be separate. They've been separate for a long time and they're like, you know what? The spark, it's gone. Arakko's ruling government has 4 distinct sections, which govern different parts of their civilization, with some areas having more power at given times. For example, in war times, Dawn is the area that typically gets more say, as this is the area that Dawn rules over and governs. The war times. For years, the Iraqi were at war with Amenth, so this would have been a very prominent section for many years in the past in terms of their ruling body. And it's something that the mutants of Arakko struggle with releasing themselves from, the obligation to always be on guard and kinda always be at war with people. While Uranos recently cleaned the clock of the Great Ring of Arakko, that should not undermine their strength, as Uranos is basically on a whole other level by himself as one of the most powerful, ruthless, and I would say evil Eternals that we've ever seen. And I know people would probably like put the X-Men above the Eternals or mutants above Eternals, but let me tell you, the Eternals are still pretty powerful, so we gotta respect. Number 6. Versus Inhumans Unity Team. Inhumans vs. X-Men was an interesting time, to say the least. We basically had to come up with a reason for these two groups to fight one another, which we did by making the mutants deathly allergic to Terrigen mists, which had actually been released around the world, which ended up killing, a lot of mutants. As a result, Emma Frost made a martyr out of Cyclops, using him to propel forward her own plot to eliminate the threat of the Inhumans. She ended up being one of the main leaders of this team, which was sort of a unity squad, bringing together all mutant-related X-teams, primarily Magneto's X-Men, an X-Men team with past versions of the characters, and a more current X-Men team, in addition to some other mutants who have served on X-Men teams before. Number 5, Sword Bearers of Arakko. I mean, when you consider the Sword Bearers of Arakko, we're all pretty much kicking the champions of Krakoa's butts, kinda have to put them high up on this list, right? Well, the Araki are newer when it comes to the mutant status quo and what we consider to be, you know, an X team, considering we kinda just met them, and they are loosely tied to the X-Men through both their connection to Apocalypse and, you know, being mutants. At the end of the day, they are still mutants, and for that reason, I think we can include them on this list, because this list for me is really more about mutant teams. That's what it's really about, more than, you know, specifically X-Men sister teams or X-Men rosters, which we could do, but I don't know. I feel like to me that's a different list. We just use the name X-Men here because it makes more sense in relation to Marvel Mutants and is more appealing than if, you know, we just put Marvel Mutants in the title of this video. You dig me? The Sword Bearers of Arakko didn't just best their Krakoan competitors in contests of combat and wit, but also in some of the more charismatic and just straight up strange contests. Also beating them in a dancing competition, a runway model one or like a fashion show contest, and a scavenger hunt, to name a few of those seen in X-Force issue number 14 of that 2019 series during the 10 of Swords event. Oh man, I love 10 of Swords. Number 4, the Five. The Five have to be one of my favorite teams to this day. They also in essence stand to represent this current era of X-Men, which seems sadly finally be coming to a close. Oh no, I'm going to be so sad to see it end. I'm not ready to say goodbye. I'm gonna need a box of tissues whenever if we do a video about that. Oh gosh, I'm gonna be crying the whole time. The Five are iconic in this way because they represent the power mutant kind now holds. The power over life and death. Mutants can resurrect other mutants, and not just that, they can resurrect other people as well, as it turns out, non-mutant people. So they don't just decide who lives and dies in regards to other mutants, but can also pass this judgment on to all the people of Earth. The Five are the team that allows this to happen. They're led by Hope Summers, and the roster includes Egg, Proteus, Tempest, and Elixir. Together, these 5 teammates can resurrect mutants by creating eggs and imbuing those eggs with life, growing clones of mutants who have died, and using their powers to not just recreate them physically, but also to recreate them on a genetic level, giving them back their powers and even modifying them to be as they were in real life. For example, Wolverine having his adamantium-coated skeleton, which is not part of his powers, but you know, something he got later in life, they can do that and also give him those sweet adamantium claws. In addition, the Five also use backups Professor X keeps on Cerebro for all mutants to restore their memories as well, so that they are in essence the same person who died recently. Although the question of what this means for their soul is still something that I think we're considering, and I wonder if that will have repercussions after we end this era. Who hasn't died? That's gonna be the real question. Who hasn't died yet? We should do a list on that. Number 3, Extinction. The Extinction team truly is a scary one. They were around at a time when the Phoenix Force was believed to be returning to Earth. It was thought that the Phoenix Force wanted to merge with mutant messiah Hope Summers and have her act as its host. While the X-Men were more optimistic about the Phoenix's return, the Avengers were not so optimistic. As a result, the mutants deployed their own team to fight against the Avengers, but which was initially also created to defend the mutant island of Utopia and, honestly, the world against extinction level threats. Hence the name, the Extinction Team, you know what I mean? The Extinction Team included Cyclops, Magneto, Namor, Storm, Dagger, Magic, Hope Summers, Emma Frost, and Colossus. Talk about a powerhouse lineup. Never mind the Phoenix Force, this team in and of itself seems frightening enough to justify the Avengers' concern, assuming they don't trust the mutants having power, which, while at times both teams have been allied, has always seemed to remain a bit of a touchy subject to the Avengers, who have a history of not playing well with other major superhero teams in the Marvel Universe, to be honest. In fact, they also even have a history of not playing well with each other within their own team. So yeah, me just throwing shade at the Avengers. Number 2, the Phoenix Five. 5 seems to be a magic number when it comes to the mutants. While the Five, as they are simply known, are all about life and resurrection, the Phoenix Five have the potential to just straight up destroy worlds. Or I suppose they could also save them, if they can avoid being corrupted by the Phoenix's power, that is. The Phoenix Five are what some members of the Extinction Team become after the Phoenix Force arrives on Earth. During a fight with the Avengers, the Phoenix Force is split into 5 pieces. When Iron Man attempts to destroy it. These pieces end up merging with 5 hosts, creating the team we know as the Phoenix Five. Of the Extinction team, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Magic, and Colossus are the ones who end up as the Phoenix's hosts, dividing the team. While initially the members of the Phoenix Five attempt to use their newfound power for good, they all end up kinda getting corrupted, with other members also stealing their power until it is all combined into one host, ending with Scott Summers, aka Cyclops. We all know how that went. Professor X ended up as a dead guy. Number 1. X-Men. Obviously, one of the best and most powerful around has to be the X-Men. I mean, come on. Of course I'm gonna pick the X-Men. I mean, is it too obvious? I don't know, but it's true. And I would say we've actually had one of the best X-Men rosters in recent years, with the previous roster that included Jean Grey, Cyclops, Synch, Lara Kinney's Wolverine, Rogue, Polaris, and Sunfire. While the team has had many different rosters throughout the years that have been standout, Jerry Dugan's team was pretty stacked, especially when you consider you have 2 people that can use other people's powers, one of whom can sync with anyone else on the team. And the current team as well is also fairly stacked, especially with Bobby returning to the main X-Men team and him being a pretty unstoppable force as an Omega level mutant. I mean, honestly, I think Iceman, if he was just a team, he could be a one-man team. That's how powerful he is. If we also considered amassing all the X-Men that had ever served to make one giant super team, then the X-Men would also definitely be the most powerful, as they've had so many members rotate on and off the team throughout the years. Even the team from the classic era, still being younger too, at the time that is, they're not as young now, were pretty powerful. And then of course there were the 80s and the 90s for X-Men, which also saw a lot of really powerful lineups, to be honest, with Kitty Pryde, Logan's Wolverine, Rogue, Havoc, Polaris, and even powerhouses like Magneto and Rachel Summers joining the team. Rachel Summers herself could also be a one-woman team. Number 10. Louise. Louise is not a major character in terms of being a huge mutant or key villain to mutants in the current series, but she is someone who will likely end up becoming a close friend and ally of Wolverine's. She first appeared in issue number 1 of the newest Wolverine series that started in 2020. I actually remember reading that first issue when I was in New York City, right before the world went crazy. Oh my, what a time. Memories. Louise is a member of the Night Guard, and while she dropped off after issue 1, as we keep coming back to Dracula and the vampire nations going ons in the Wolverine series, she too has resurfaced. Louise was given a suit by Forge to help slow her transformation into a vampire after she and her Night Guard were attacked and either killed or turned. She once more teamed up with Logan as they went head to head with Dracula and his loyal subjects, and likely she'll be back again as this slow burning story continues to be developed. In fact, I think this is going to be like the big story before the end of this current Wolverine series, whenever we get there. Number 9. Cyclops Lass. So Cyclops Lass might not be one of the most important characters on this list, but I still think she is a character you should get to know because, well, she's just a cool character. I really like Cyclops Lass. Cyclops Lass is Beatrice Buddy Bartholomew and is the leader of the Children of the Atom. By the way, it took me a minute to realize when I first heard of this fan-composed mutant-inspired teen hero team's name that their group name was another phrase used for mutants and even the X-Men back in the day. It's pretty cool when you realize that. Neat stuff. Cyclops Lass appears to have powers similar to the X-Men member and often leader, Cyclops, but in reality we learned that it was actually alien tech which gave her team their powers, allowing them to appear like mutants and like some of their favorite X-Men members. Still, Buddy is a cool character, and while Children of the Atom has ended, I do hope we get to see more of its team members. Buddy made her first cameo appearance in Marvel's Voices issue number 1 and her full appearance in Children of the Atom issue number 1. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more mutant lists, please let us know by hitting that like button. It really does help us out at the channel, and it lets us know that you want more X lists, which honestly I like giving you all the X-Men things, so yes, let's do it. Number 8. Cosmar. Cosmar is one of the new mutants, if that makes sense. She first appeared in issue number 9 of the newest series from 2020. Currently there are 2 different groups of new mutants in that series, the one based on the mutant island nation of Krakoa, who are truly feeling those outcast vibes right now, and currently are like the Shadow King's lost mutant kids, and the other traditional new mutant team who is more focused on space adventures and other international exploits. When Cosmar's powers first manifested, it resulted in the death of her parents. Her powers cause her to suck people into her nightmares, as she creates a reality warping sphere surrounding her. All those who touch or interact with it run the risk of being sucked in. And I believe Forge actually made her a suit as well, as far as just making everybody little things to help them with their powers, to help her sort of control those powers so that they wouldn't be so disastrous. Number 7. Gimmick. Gimmick is a new mutant who first appeared and had her powers manifest in Children of the Atom. She was the one member of the team who actually ended up making it to Krakoa due to the fact that she was a real mutant, in addition to also being a major fangirl of the X-Men. But aside from her being a mutant, Carmen Cruz is also good friends with the fellow Children of the Atom, with Cyclops Lass, aka Buddy, probably being her best friend on the team and also her secret crush who she's in love with. Another thing that I love about Carmen is that she also is the person that makes all the costumes on the team, and she's super into cosplay, which I just think is like super cool and super cute. We don't have a lot of characters in the comics that are cosplayers, so I really liked that element. Gimmick's powers appeared initially to be similar to Gambit's, but this was all done using alien technology. In reality, when Carmen's mutant powers manifested, it was revealed that they were shapeshifting in nature and also granted her a healing factor. Carmen made her first cameo appearance in 2020 in Marvel's Voices issue 1, but would appear fully in the first issue of Children of the Atom the following year in 2021. Also, when she did have her Gambit powers, it was pretty cool because she was like throwing basically little like clothing pins, if that makes sense, at people, which I love. Number 6. Maxime and Manon. Maxime and Manon are relatively new characters and mutants who appeared within the last year, but we also now potentially have a different version of them in the current X books. They're likely from a different continuity due to what we learned during the Dawn of X period of the current line. There's like a version of them I think that's like 616, and then there's a version of them that doesn't actually have a reality number officially yet, but yes. Maxime and Manon, as we see them in the current timeline, are a brother and sister who together can heavily manipulate and warp the minds of others. Maxime can manipulate the emotions of his target, and Manon can manipulate and alter their memories, making the two a powerful duo when working in tandem. Maxime and Manon once served Ahab, being brainwashed into using their powers to make hounds for him. However, they would later be freed by Jean Grey, and Cable would convince her to look after them. Maxime and Manon are currently relevant because in the New Mutant series, they use their powers to make two humans attack one another and fight to the death, which is against Krakoan law. Woo! However, nothing seems to have come from them taking this extreme action just yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it comes around at some point. Number 5. Bay the Blood Moon. Bay the Blood Moon is an awesome new character who made her first appearance in the Ten of Swords event back in the second main book from the event, Ten of Swords Stasis. She was one of the Araco mutants who was called to compete in the Otherworld tournament, fighting to represent her nation. However, her fight actually ended up being a marriage. Basically, the Otherworld tournament was gloriously weird because it was being led by Saturnine. So we had traditional sword fights combined with lots of different kinds of battles, including puzzle solving duels, food eating competitions, dance-offs, and even an arranged marriage. However, it also all worked out as Cypher and Bay were seemingly both enamored with the other, as they were both masters of language and communication, but who struggled to understand one another, which fascinated them both, especially Cypher. They were both married and were each awarded a point, as it was considered a shared victory for both sides. Also, the art in the issue of Excalibur where they get married is just so good. It's so great. I love it. Number 4. Chen Zhao. Chen is not a mutant, nor is she an ally to mutant kind. She is just the opposite, their enemy. After coming up against the Marauders, trying to inspire mutant hate in her people as a public figurehead, billionaire, and anti-mutant activist, she ended up allying herself with Hominis Verendi. Still hell-bent on destroying mutant kind's reputation as heroes, and now especially focused on doing harm to the band of mutant heroes that we know as the Marauders. Chen Zhao made her first appearance back in 2019 in Marauders issue 1, which once again, if you haven't read any of this comic, why not go back and start with that first issue in Chen's first appearance. Currently, Chen is Hominis Verendi's White Bishop, and she's definitely a villain that I think is going to be more prominent and keep getting like more badass, which I love. Number 3. Dolores Ramirez. Dolores Ramirez is another non-mutant, but someone who is a very important character within and around the X-Men universe currently. She is the head of the X-Desk, and no, I don't mean that she worked with Jonathan Hickman to bring our current line of X-Books to life. Within Earth 616, she is the one who presides over the United States government X-Desk, which monitors, keeps tabs on, and ultimately kind of spies on the mutant nation of Krakoa and its major players and political stratagems. The X-Desk is a department within the CIA. Dolores once offered to help fellow CIA agent Jeff Bannister, ally of Wolverine, who had been working with him, but he turned her down. Dolores was also one of the lucky few to get an invite to the Hellfire Gala and met with Storm in secret during her first appearance in Marauders issue 11, where she was rewarded for leaking some important information about poisoned medicine to the mutants. So while she's watching them, she also kind of seems pretty friendly. Number 2. Arakko. Arakko is both an island and a mutant just like Krakoa. In fact, there was a time when both Krakoa and Arakko were joined together, but years ago they were separated. Arakko made their first appearance in Powers of X issue number 4, and later on we learn of all that went on there with the island, including the mutants who inhabited it and their connection to a vastly important mutant, Apocalypse. Following the Ten of Swords event, Arakko attempted to reunite with Krakoa, but both islands decided, they were no longer really interested in one another, and the time had basically changed them. They reluctantly rejoined until a more suitable option was found for Arakko and the mutants of Krakoa. In planet-size X-Men, some of the mutants banded together under the direction of Magneto to terraform Mars and move Arakko and its inhabitants, the mutants of Arakko, to the now alive planet. That's what happens when you terraform a planet, you bring it to life again. I actually didn't know that Mars was considered a dead planet until I read Planet-Size X-Men, and I was like, wow, I feel like I'm also learning some science facts, which is great. Number 1. Genesis. One of the most badass of all the new characters we've gotten recently in the world of X-Men. Genesis is the long-lost wife of Apocalypse, who also was one of the main leaders of Arakko. She ended up fighting against Annihilation and becoming its new host in order to save her people, uniting both the Amenthi and the mutants of Arakko. Donning the mask, she became a leader of the Amenthi demon army, but also lost a part of herself in the process, as the Annihilation mask possessed and corrupted her. However, during the Ten of Swords tournament, she fought against her husband, Apocalypse, who managed to free her from the golden helm of Annihilation, taking it for himself. But Apocalypse's will proved strong enough to resist its influence, and the mask was then transformed by Saturnine into a much less influential and corrupting staff, which was then gifted to Genesis. Genesis made her first full appearance in the 2019 X-Men series in issue number 12, but we wouldn't learn that she was Annihilation until much later. Number 10. Beast. Oh boy, Beast has been getting dunked on lately, and it has honestly been brutal to read. He might not be a powerhouse in terms of brute strength, but Beast is no slouch in a fight, thanks to his heightened dexterity, years of training, and his ability to pack a punch when needed. But really, his strengths as an X-Men member and former Avenger lie in the area of intellect, specifically in the field of science. And friends, before I move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, and if you love when I talk about X-Men, I love when I talk about X-Men, please support that by clicking like on this video. Seriously, it feeds the algorithm, it helps us, then I can talk more about X-Men. Number 9. Rogue. Rogue is one of those characters who I feel like is constantly shafted from the spotlight because of just how powerful she is, and now she's even more powerful since she reconciled with the trauma that was effectively holding back her powers. So while I was saddened to hear of this, it didn't surprise me when she ended up in a coma almost immediately after being drafted to the X-Men adjacent UK fantasy team Excalibur. Jonathan Hickman had specifically planned to do a Rogue-focused story and series that probably would have tied into the Krakoan-based second ever Inferno event. But alas, he left the X-desk before this plan could come to fruition, meaning it kinda got abandoned. Sure, Rogue was on the X-Men, which was very nice to see, but at the same time, she's very much an ensemble member on that team, and she also left shortly after joining, honestly. So we still have yet to get that epic Rogue spotlight period that I was hoping for in the Krakoan era. Number 8. Multiple Man. Multiple Man is just such a great character when it comes to the comics. He deserves so much more, honestly. Well, he's appeared here and there, and he was a main character in the all too short-lived X-Corp series. We really haven't seen too much of him in this era. Granted, everything I have read involving him from the Krakoan era has been great. But of course, this just leaves me wanting more of him. His appearances in this era have often left me asking the question of, when are we getting another Jamie Madrox solo series, and why haven't we gotten volume 2 yet? He needs an ongoing solo series, guys. I'm just saying. I would read it, I'll buy it. Marvel, if you're watching, you got at least one buyer right here. I'm sure there's other people too. Multiple Man fans, let me know that you exist in the comments. Number 7, Psylocke. What has Psylocke even been up to lately? After years of being attached to Betsy Braddock, Quanon, who took the name, Psylocke, has only recently been getting attention in the comics. This is because, well, for a while she was too complicated and weird to talk about, to be honest. Betsy, you see, was put in Kwanon's body, making her a Caucasian British lady appear Asian, which I think you can understand is weird and, to many, myself included, was considered to be culturally insensitive. That being said, both Kwanon and Betsy are fantastic characters that don't deserve to be shelved just because of their awkward past connection to one another. Just because we made that choice for them, it doesn't mean that they deserve to just be forgotten. I want more for both of them. For Betsy, we've seen some of this in regards to her being declared as the new Captain Britain, but for Kwanon, who decided to keep the codename Psylocke, her growth feels like it's kind of still ongoing and it kind of got a little stagnant. I loved her development in Hellions and I'm still hoping to see more of this, so hopefully we get more Psylocke action. Number 6, Strong Guy. Strong Guy just hasn't been around much lately for me, and that's a crying shame. He literally is one of the strongest X-Men, I mean it's in the name, and yet I haven't really seen him much lately in the X-books, save for a few appearances I read in X-Men Unlimited, the Infinity comic version of that series, launched back in 2021. In that story that I saw him in there, Strong Man goes on an adventure with his pal Multiple Man. It's good, but it's not really enough to satisfy me when it comes to Strong Man's presence in this current era, which has just been underwhelming. Number 5, Cannonball. Cannonball has been seemingly busy of late, focusing on his family life, but because of that, it's felt somewhat like he's been snubbed in the comics. For the last 4 years, the entirety of the Krakoan era thus far, he's not been doing very much. He did help out with the New Mutants as one of the original founding members, obviously. Almost made it onto the X-Men, being a candidate in the 2021 elections, but ultimately failed to be voted in and instead ended up joining the one-shot team Sunspot's Secret X-Men, which was a fun story, but hey, it's only a one-shot, you know? And then when he finally does get a moment of glory, voted onto the 2023 X-Men roster at the 2023 Hellfire Gala, he's immediately killed off. Rude. Hopefully we'll see some redemption for Cannonball following the fall of X, but honestly, it's sad that he didn't get his moment in the spotlight really during one of the greatest X-Men eras I've yet to read. It's a little disappointing. Number 4, Dazzler. Alison Blair has to be one of my favorite X-Men of all time, which is why I was, of course, surprised when I discovered that after her solo series, she never really did too much, nor caught on in terms of popularity. Allison has always kind of been on the outside of heroics for the most part, as in her series and often in her life, she's more focused on working on becoming a superstar and using her mutant talents to skyrocket herself and her band to stardom as a professional musician and singer. However, this is also why I was so surprised after reading her solo series and getting used to that depiction of her to see how different she had become in Inferno. By that time, Dazzler had turned into a short-haired rocker who was also a reluctant member of the X-Men. Allison has always been a reluctant hero, but when it comes to heroics that she gets tossed into, she also always rises to the task, and some folks don't seem to nail this characterization when it comes to her depiction, which ultimately leaves fans like me kind of disappointed. Like, I want to see Allison working on her career, but I want to see her pulled into stuff, and then she basically has to rise to the challenge. You know what I mean? That's my favorite Dazzler. Number 3, Archangel. Archangel might not be one of the first people that comes to your mind when you think strongest X-Men, but I would argue that he is one of the strongest when it comes to the areas of experience and business. And if we're considering Warren Worthington III in his Archangel form, which he has been like in and out of consistently throughout the Krakoan era, though masking it all the while as best he can, Angel never gets enough love. And X-Corp was far too short of a series for me. So yeah, I want more X-Corp and I want just more Angel. He never gets enough love. Number 2, Rockslide. Rockslide, or rather Wrong Slide, as he's known now, although technically that's a different character, feels like he was built up just to be taken away from us. We never saw too much development for him in this era until he was about to be shafted and taken away. Actually, there wasn't even development. It was like he showed up and then gone. He was one of the first to fall victim to the surprising effects of dying in Otherworld, which we'd later learn severely messed with the mutants' resurrection protocols of the Krakoan era. Ultimately, this resulted in him being seemingly destroyed permanently in such a way that it was believed he could never be resurrected again. However, the mutants refused to give up on those who had fallen during the Otherworld tournament and the events leading up to it, and managed to find a way to resurrect their fallen. But unfortunately, dying in Otherworld had left them forever changed when they returned. And many of the characters that were changed as a result kind of faded into the background thanks to them being so different. Rockslide being one of them, who now is Wrong Slide, which like I said, isn't even technically Rockslide, so Yeah. Number 1, Gorgon. Gorgon was never really a member of the main X-Men team, long being considered more of an X-Men villain and assassin who was often in the employ of the Yakuza or Hydra, I believe. He is often considered one of the most deadly mutant assassins in the comics, with his mutant power allowing him to turn people to stone if they dare look him in the eye. However, while he wasn't part of the main good guy X-Men team, he has been a member of the Dark X-Men, and I'm gonna count that because my list. During the Krakoan era, he also turned over a new leaf, choosing to join the Mutant Nation and become an ally to all of mutant kind, working as part of the Quiet Council's security detail. Unfortunately, his deadly powers and skills were not enough to keep him safe during the Otherworld tournament. And, like Wrong Slide, Gorgon was forever changed by his death in the Otherworld tournament, with him coming back with basically the mind of a child. In this new form, he played a role in Way of X, that series, but it also seems that the Gorgon so many of us loved may actually be forever lost, because he's once again been permanently changed by that resurrection.
At number 10 is Phoenix Force Magneto. In this reality, Magneto merged with the fiery cosmic force, forging a fearsome union. His quest to mold Hope Summers into a Phoenix host underscored his unrelenting will, defying warnings from the Avengers and X-Men alike. Yet this fusion spiraled into chaos, necessitating a coalition from Charles Xavier, the Hulk, and Wolverine to quell the cataclysm. The prospect of a Phoenix Magneto conjures an ominous blend, melding two extremes, the cosmic Phoenix Force and Magneto's unyielding darkness. Unlike others, Magneto swiftly succumbed to the Force's corrupting influence, illuminating his inherent malevolence. This accelerated plunge led to a world-shattering clash, sparing only Wolverine through Jean Grey's timely intervention. In a universe where Magneto harnesses the Phoenix, a realm-engulfing menace emerges. In defeat, this fusion echoes the staggering potency and unbridled havoc they embody, weaving a tale of mutant and cosmic might on an unprecedented scale. If you're enjoying the video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 9 is Juggernautical. Juggernaut as a massive boat. Yeah, the multiverse is weird, you guys. Anyways, the Juggernautical, a seafaring behemoth, is unlike any other. See, this colossal ship being was no ordinary vessel. It was the marionette of a mystical book, a navigator of the arcane. But as fate would have it, this enigmatic tomb found its way into the clutches of none other than Admiral Harry Greik, a high-ranking officer of the Royal Navy. A perfect storm brewed as the Juggernautical set its course upon the Exiles, a group tasked with mending the threads of the multiverse, and the Juggernautical even crossed paths with the infamous Blackbeard. Yet, the winds of fortune are ever fickle. In a cinematic clash, Blink emerged as the hero of this otherworldly seafaring saga. With a flicker of teleportation mastery, she wrestled control of the book from the Great's grasp and in an act of defiance, hurled it into the abysmal depths of the ocean. At number 8 is Sabretooth. I mean, it's a team up of Sabretooths from across the multiverse, so I'm calling the team the Sabretooth. In an alternate reality, a ferocious female Sabretooth is abducted by Graydon Creed, who's on a mission to eradicate versions of Sabretooth across the multiverse. She's imprisoned with other Sabretooths, all of whom have their power suppressed. Together they break free, confront Graydon, and after a fierce battle, banish him through a portal. United by their experience, they opt to stay in Earth 616, seizing a spaceship to embark on their own interdimensional adventure. At number 7 is Baron Sinister. Welcome to Battle World, the tapestry of twisted domains where alternate realities collide. Among these shards of existence, we find the enigmatic Baron Sinister ruling over his own dominion. Bar Sinister, a realm inhabited by clones and created by the Tyrant's hand. But clones can't be the only thing on this villain's menu, as he keeps a select few non-clones as playthings for his whims. Now Sinister and King Hyperion, two formidable forces, conspire against the House of Braddock of Higher Avalon. Exposed and accused of discord, Sinister faced trial under the gaze of God Emperor Doom's enforcers. A duel between Baron Sinister and Baron Braddock then ensued. Amidst the crumbling Doom's rule, Sinister, edged on by Captain Marvel, joined the rebellion, leading to clashes and a betrayal that culminated in his demise at the hands of Baron Apocalypse. At number 6 is Dark Phoenix Mystique. So this Mystique story is pretty familiar, shadowing the path of her mainstream self up until King Loki decides to give his brother Thor a run for his money with a Harley dose of suffering. During all this, Mystique decides it's time to settle her score with none other than Logan, aka Wolverine. She whips out this Phoenix Blaster, yeah, you heard me right, stealing away the Phoenix Force from him and spreading his body parts across the vast expanse of the multiverse. Her stint as the Dark Phoenix lands her a recruitment offer from the Multiversal Masters of Evil. These folks go on a multi-reality rampage, taking out prehistoric heroes left and right. Cue the showdown as they target Earth 616 prehistory. The prehistoric Avengers then team up with time-traveling counterparts for a 9-day cosmic brawl. But ultimately, Dark Phoenix Mystique faces her reckoning, confronting the forces of creation and meeting her end in the torrent of the first firmament. At number 5 is the Pyro Nightcrawler Chimera. Imagine a world where Pyro and Nightcrawler's DNA are blended together like a mutant smoothie. Now this flaming hot chimera finds itself in the company of the Legion of the Night, a group of shadowy teleporting amalgamations created by Mr. Sinister. Their latest escapade involves a rather daring ambush at the Sanctum Sanctorium, but hold on, there's a little bit of a twist. After Vox Ignis uses her Scream of Change to instill some morals and values into some of the clones, the reformed members of the Legion found themselves in a clash of ideologies with their steadfastly sinister comrades, and the inevitable showdown followed. A brawl that pitted reformation against loyalty, and well, I'm not gonna spoil the ending, but let's just say things got heated, pun intended. At number 4 is Sugar Man. No, he's not a candy enthusiast or a pastry chef. This guy's got a rather unique set of powers that'll make him stand out in the rogues gallery. First up, let's talk about his powerful tongue. Now, I know what you're all thinking. How impressive can a tongue really be? You have no idea. Sugar Man's tongue is no ordinary one. It's like a versatile tool of destruction, capable of piercing through almost anything. And I mean anything. We're talking stone, steel, and even beings in gaseous or liquid form. But that's not all, folks. Sugar Man could do a bit of size and mass alteration as well. He's got this nifty ability to control his own mass, which means he can shrink down if he wants to, and when he loses mass, he doesn't just vanish into thin air, it apparently gets sent off to some mysterious extra-dimensional space. Where exactly? Well, it's anyone's guess. Oh, and injuries are no biggie. He regenerates faster than you can say ouch. He's shrugged off blows that would even make Wolverine winced. Crushed by Colossus' boot? No problem. Beaten to a pulp with a metal pipe? Back on his feet. Impaled with multiple pieces of metal? Just a minor inconvenience. But here's where things get really interesting. Sugar Man isn't just brawn, he's got brains too. Super genius intelligence, in fact, particularly when it comes to all things genetics. At number 3 is Omega World Apocalypse. In the far alternate future of 3167 AD, civilizations crumble, races vanish, and the survivors, the Atlanteans and humans and the Stark Self, Wakandans, Mystics, and Moldoids, find themselves under the oppressive rule of Apocalypse in a place called Omega World, a sprawling structure where Apocalypse has essentially become the heart, turning what remained of Earth into what's essentially an extension of his body. His horsemen, now acting as sort of antibodies or white blood cells, would cleanse the Omega World of anything which would cause him harm. Long story short, Apocalypse gets himself a fatal knife to the back by Nightcrawler, causing Omega World to crumble. At number 2 is the Sky Whale Brood Queen. Okay, this one is super weird. So somehow on Earth 13371, Charles Xavier becomes an Akanti Sky Whale. I can't even look at it. For those listening, imagine a giant cosmic whale with fleshy skin and a pupilless human face. It's truly a bizarre sight to be seen. But things get even more bizarre as our good old Xavier Sky Whale hybrid gets taken over by none other than the Brood Queen, set out on conquering the Marvel Universe and using Xavier as a vessel to transport her alien brood. Now, despite being telepathically controlled by the Brood Queen, Xavier's mental fortitude allowed him to keep most of his powers a secret from her. After teleporting to Earth 616, the Brood Queen was exterminated by the Extreme X-Men. Once freed, Char Whales Xavier, I like that one, Char Whales, no, asks Dazzler to end his life as he knew that in this form he was weak and could be dangerous if controlled by a more powerful mind. Get dumped on, Brood Queen. And at number 1 is President X. In this alternate universe, Charles Xavier, who never establishes Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, decides to become a politician instead. And yup, that's all it takes for Xavier to become the evil polar opposite counterpart to his 616 version, becoming completely wrathful, cruel, and a sadistically megalomaniacal tyrant desiring nothing but total control over everyone around him. Cause remember y'all, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Though he's never revealed to be a mutant himself, it's speculated that Xavier's telekinetic abilities aided him in tracking down mutants across the nation. A stark contrast to his Earth 616 counterpart, this Xavier exhibited an authoritarian and cruel rule, causing protests notably from billionaire Anthony Stark. The catalyst for change arrived as Stark formed the Avengers specifically to counter Xavier's regime. Unfortunately, Xavier's response proved devastating as a missile targeted the Avengers Quinjet, obliterating its occupants. This tragic loss included iconic figures like Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and other— Wait, Thor? Hold up. he took out Thor with a missile? Whoa, okay. With big players gone, Xavier's oppressive reign expanded further, with all mutants confined to a grim prison in Texas, subjected to his psychological torment and horrifically abusive tendencies, even torturing some of them to their demise while subjugating the survivors to cruel experiments in an effort to control their mutations for their own good. This dark incarnation of Xavier remains a chilling portrait of power-driven malevolence, unafraid to exercise a ruthless authority.